Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem HaKadosh. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS, to the true leaders of Israel today, and salutations to all of the Akim who do this work in truth and sincerity, who risk their lives and their freedoms to do so, as well as the scattered Israelites who come looking like the heathen, but are not, by way of their forefathers' seeds who are Israelite men. The true name of the Most High is Yahweh, and his son's name is Yahushai. And the Lord's holy chosen people are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as we're the ones who suffer under the curses in the book of Deuteronomy. My name is Akalia, and this video is about the prophecy of America's allies turning against her and destroying her, right? Because America is going to be destroyed by thermonuclear fire. That's written within the scriptures. America is Babylon the Great. America is that beast that goes into perdition, the eighth beast, it says in Revelation chapter 17, that goes into perdition, okay? And World War III is a part of Bible prophecy and will be occurring. And the place of contention is going to be over there in the so-called Middle East, which is actually Western Asia. So Yahweh Shemishah is going to gather the heathen over there to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is Yehoshaphat, Yahweh's judgment, and they're going to fight that war over there. All right, the scriptures say Armageddon. All right, Revelation chapter 16 and verse 16. And at the end of that, the ICBM missiles which have been developed, that technology which has been given to the heathen, they're going to be using it. And they're going to be using it against America, which is once again Babylon the Great. And so it's not only going to be America's enemies shooting the missiles at her, it will also be her allies that are going to destroy her as well. In Revelation chapter 17 and verse 16, it says, "And the 10 horns, which is the European Union, which thou sawest upon the beast, which is NATO, these shall hate the whore, which is America," right? America, Babylon the Great, Revelation chapter 17 and verse 5, "And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth," right? So that's talking about America. So it says, "And shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire." So America's allies, the European Union and NATO, are going to burn her with fire, which means that, according to Bible prophecy, the relationship between America and her allies is going to deteriorate to the point where they turn against her and destroy her. So, looking at current events, you can see the relationship between America and her allies literally being torn apart by Yahweh Shemishai. And it is going to happen because it is Bible prophecy. Okay? So this is why, over time we're seeing that certain things are happening between America and her allies. The whole tariff situation, the whole situation with Ukraine, where Trump denied the EU and NATO from the talks to try and quote-unquote resolve that situation, which angered the EU and NATO. And then more reports came out where the EU and NATO were talking about they're no longer going to be sharing certain intelligence information with the United States. But that's like one of the more recent situations. Over the years since I've been in the truth, I've been observing all of these prophecies, and there have been times where France, Germany, the UK, certain members of NATO and the EU, they have done things and they have disagreed with America's position, and they've done things that have not necessarily been the best for America. So, this is the kingdom of the Edomites, man, and they are clearly torn apart. Okay, but here it is from RT. European Union nastier than China, Trump. The US president accused the bloc of unfair trade practices, including barriers to American car exports and shifting pharmaceutical costs. US President Donald Trump has intensified his criticism of the European Union, labeling it nastier than China regarding trade practices. In early April, Washington imposed a sweeping 20% tariff on all EU goods and a 25% tariff on all car imports and metals. while Trump later announced a 90-day reprieve on most trade duties. A baseline 10% tariff and the above-mentioned 25% tariff remain in force until an agreement is reached. The European Union is in many ways nastier than China. Now, this is an ally to America. And China, well, you already know the narrative that's out there, man, regarding how, the leadership of America feels about China. And China is actually aligned with Russia, who is, also aligned with Iran. And, America's main ally, number one ally, is truly the Israelis, the state of Israel. And if you do your research, you'll see all of the tensions that are happening there. So America, they don't even like China, but here it is that they're blasting their own allies in this type of way, while also imposing tariffs on them and speaking and saying that they're nastier than their enemy, right? You can just see how it's all, coming along. Trump stated during a press conference, "They treated us very unfairly. They sell us 13 million cars, we sell them none. They sell us their agricultural products, we sell them virtually none," the president claimed, adding that Brussels has been suing our companies, Apple, Google, and Meta. Now, that's interesting information because I didn't even know that. So Brussels, where's Brussels? I think that's Germany, right? But going back to Revelation chapter 17 and verse 16, it mentions something when it says, "And shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh." So it says, "shall eat her flesh," which means, obviously not literally, it means that America's allies are going to be doing things to weaken her position, right? You can even envision some kind of beast or animal where over time, the flesh is being torn away from it. And of course, by that, they would become weaker over time. So America's allies have played their parts as well, okay? But this is the kingdom of the Edomites, and, the Edomites are these so-called white people, and they're the wicked. So they're not going to be doing good unto one another because that's just how they're built. They're the wicked, okay? So the American leader predicted that the EU would come down a lot since the US holds all the cards. And so this is America, man. This is the whore that rides the beast, speaking very proudly and very loudly against, that beast, right? And the 10 horns, which thou sawest upon the beast, okay? Because America's always been at the head. So Trump further stated that the bloc is also to blame, at least in part, for the excessively high prices that Americans have to pay for prescription drugs. According to the president, Brussels has been unfairly exerting brutal pressure on pharmaceutical companies to keep prices low in Europe, while refusing to shoulder the fair share of the firm's research and development and other related costs. However, Washington is now set to equalize the situation, equalize, quote unquote. Trump promised, concluding that Europe is going to have to pay a little bit more and America is going to pay a lot less. Trump's remarks came hours after Washington and Beijing agreed during the negotiations in Geneva to scrap or suspend most of the new trade duties introduced since early April, pending further talks. And, they can suspend it, they can do whatever with it, and people may say, oh, yeah, things aren't going to be so bad and all these kinds of things. But, this is that ping pong. That ping pong effect, right? That's been going on for all of these years where, it's like things are going to get worse and look really bad, and then it pulls back a little bit. But guess what? Eventually, it's just not going to be that, because the scriptures talk about a very terrible time that is coming, man, upon the world. So it is going to come a time of great tribulation and a time of Jacob's trouble, right, for the nation of Israel. So it says, as a result, overall U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods will stand at 30%, and Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods will be 10% starting May 14th. May 14th. I think that's tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow. The EU, for its part, has made several attempts at negotiating trade and tariffs with the US, though none of them have so far yielded a breakthrough. Yeah, because it's an extremely proud nation, the Edomites. So none of them are going to want to yield. And the EU and NATO over time, they have become stronger, and that's why, they've made certain attempts to kind of become independent from, America in certain ways. But America is at the top of it all, right, regarding this Edomite kingdom. Last Thursday, the European Commission presented a list of countermeasures which could affect 95 billion euros worth of US goods should negotiations fail. Trump's trade advisor Peter Navarro warned Brussels that it would be making a grave mistake if it went through with the threat, which he described as counterproductive to the talks. So this is just another situation to add fuel to the fire overall, right? And more situations are going to come up. But, it is what it is. And in Salakia, Mark chapter 3 and verse 26, it says, "And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand." No, Salakia. Let me start at verse 24. "And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand, and Esau's kingdom is clearly divided against itself." Remember that Russia is also an Edomite superpower, right? An Edomite, they're the so-called white people. So another so-called white superpower, and America, the NATO and EU are against them. And then Russia has enlisted the help of the other heathen to side with them. But then now you have the relationship between America and her close allies, the EU and NATO, being broken apart. So you can see Esau's kingdom is fragmented in several different kinds of ways. Okay? And if a house be divided against it, that house against itself, the house cannot stand, and the house of Edom is clearly divided. And if Satan referring to the Edomites here, rise up against himself and be divided, which he is literally doing, he's rising up against himself, okay, and be divided, he cannot stand but at an end. And that's where it's heading towards, man, the end of the kingdom of the Edomites, man. This vile, disgusting, abominable, wicked kingdom is coming to an end. And as the scriptures say, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So our kingdom starts when their kingdom falls, and their kingdom is in fact falling, and it shall fall without a doubt. But yeah, man, that's what it is. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Shemishai, B'Shem Kodesh. Shalom.